Sometimes numbers can be so stressful, and like imagine having to go through numbers to verify issues. It can really be a headache. I am not a fan of numbers, so this episode is very important to me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Factory. I get to speak with another member of the Fortifying Community Truth cohort, a fellow of the FCT. His name is Edem Kojo, and he is more of a data guy. He deals with numbers and he loves numbers. Like sometimes I even imagine how people tend to fall in love with numbers, but when he sees numbers, he sees stories behind them, and he's wonderful for the discussion that we are going to have. Thank you, Edem, for doing this with us.
It's a pleasure to join this very interesting podcast, video training or video tutorial that is part of this journey. Yes, I'm a proud member of the Fortify the Truth board, so it's nice to be part of this discussion.
So what's your process for verifying financial data from company reports or government statistics, and how do you ensure accuracy when working with complex data sets?
Okay, so I think first of all, to be honest with you, if you are not someone that really has a fair grasp of financial information and statistics, you are likely to struggle. So that is the very first caveat I would have to put in there. Typically, every country has its national statistical bureau. So in Ghana, like this, it's called the Ghana Statistical Service. Nigeria has theirs, which I've worked on a few digits there. There's also the South Africa one, which I've used before, and I've used Kenya. In fact, as part of international requirement, every country is supposed to have its statistical body. The good thing is that all these statistical bodies basically work in line with international best practices. So when a country sets up a statistical agency, it doesn't just set it up using its own parameters. They are generally nationally or globally acceptable parameters that you are supposed to use in the calculation of certain items. Because at the end of the day, have to also do some of these reports to, say, the World Bank or IMF if you are under their program and others. So that is a very good place to start from. And so I hear people a lot of time try to cast doubt over some of these figures, thinking that, okay, they might necessarily or they might be altered to favor the particular government. Because of the way the systems work, I can guarantee you that a lot of this data becomes foolproof, because at the end of the day, when you are going to, say, a country for aid to present those set of data to determine how you either get funds for them or how you borrow. So that's a very good place to start from. Now, also, every country has a Ministry of Finance. So I don't know how it's called elsewhere, but in Ghana, it's called the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning. You can go on their website and you can get simple statistical data. So you can get various budget items in there. You can get various economic reports. And speaking of economic reports, the National Bank also comes into play. So in Ghana, it's called the Bank of Ghana. And you have similar institutions all across the world. So these are some of the very important places you should look out for. The country's Ministry for Finance, the country's statistical service or agency, and then the country's central bank. And these three are key. You might have your qualms about the figure they put out, but I can guarantee you that because of the way the system works in terms of borrowing and others, these three agencies have to ensure that their figures reach a certain threshold in order for the country to enjoy a certain privilege. So that is a good start.
What about company reports?
For company reports, there are two ways you can get a company report. So we have listed companies and we have unlisted companies. So listed companies are companies that have floated shares. And shares here means that a part of the company that anybody owns. So a company is 100%. You could own 1%, 2%, depending on how much you invest in there. Once the company is a company that has sold certain parts of its ownership, it has to be listed on a stock exchange. Now, listed companies are actually very trustworthy when it comes into their financial report. So for a listed company, I can guarantee you that when you go to their website, so the company's website, you just type in and go to reports when you open the company's website. You're going to get each of their financial reports for every year that you have in consideration, or every year since they got listed. If you also go to the stock exchange of the country, the prevailing country's website, you should be able to see the financials of all the listed companies uploaded at the end of each accounting year, which is usually somewhere around March to June of the next year.
For you as a researcher, how do you handle discrepancies or inconsistencies, financial numbers provided by different sources, such as company statements versus independent analysis?
As a journalist or someone in the fact-checking space, it's also important, as I said, every report comes with its footnotes. So it's important to read and see what the circumstances are. If you feel you do not understand, reach out to an expert, a financial analyst, an external, and a certified auditor, and whatnot. And basically, what you're going to do is that you're going to have them explain for you to see the discrepancies. Well, it is not uncommon to see discrepancies because, unfortunately, some people might decide to give you a certain level of information or not. But it's very important for you to ensure that whatever you work with is something that has been externally verified. Because once externally verified, then you are sure that it has actually gone through due processes and is foolproof in terms of the analysis you can do. So that's basically how, as a researcher, we try to get around some of these.
When reporting on economic indicators like GDP growth or inflation rates, how do you ensure you're using the most up-to-date and accurate data available? Like, what's your approach to contextualizing these numbers for your audience?
Very, very interesting and good question. I think when it comes to these figures, it differs from country to country as to how frequent or otherwise that they publish it. I think it's very important for you to be abreast with the country that you are working with. And so, as I said, when you do a simple search on, say, the country statistical authorities website, you'll be able to see, okay, how frequent it publishes certain economic indicators. When you also say, go to the central bank and you pick its reports, or when you go to where the reports are, the economic reports are, you'll be able to notice a pattern of how frequent they are. What this does is that it helps you to follow, to track whatever is happening. So if you notice that it is always the first or second week of the month that is published, if you are reporting a story, or you're working on a story around a certain time, that is in the third week, you will know that indeed within the last 2 weeks, there has been some publication in that regard. But ultimately, before you go ahead to do your economic story, check the story platforms, the local statistical service authorities website, the central bank's website, the ministry's website, the Ministry of Finance or the Finance Ministry's website. At least one of them should be up to date in terms of the data it gives out. If you're working on a story that has say $500 million, the $500 million contract, you can actually make it relatable by juxtaposing it, and I mean comparing the figure to say the budget for education. Let's say how many schools maybe a certain amount can build. So let's say you're working on say a corruption story where say some $2 million have been misused by some or alleged to have been used by some government official. What basically you can say, is that say okay, $2 million, but you juxtapose it against say number of schools that amount could have been used to build, because it makes it more relatable for people to see the quantum. Especially when we are talking about siphon funds, the numbers tend to be so big and abstract, and if not put in the right context, can always be downplayed in terms of its effect. Because once I hear two, I think, oh, two is small. So I hear 2 million today, I hear 2 billion tomorrow. I really know what's the difference between million and billion in value. Well, but if you say, okay, a house costs 2 million. So let's assume a house in your enclave costs 2 million, say Ghana cedis. Now, if somebody is alleged to have misappropriated 2 billion Ghana cedi, that is equivalent to about 1,000 of that 2 million houses. So if you're doing a story, you can say, okay, yes, Governor A has been accused uh, of siphoning $2 billion, equivalent to 1,000 houses in Lagos City. That is when people will get to appreciate the figures very well. And then you can get people to now see how important that story is. So it's always important to not try to do a lot of the mouth, make it rounded as much as possible, and try to use a lot of terms that are easily appreciable by people. So say a half, more than a half, less than a half. It makes it easier for people to appreciate. Then also relate it to some equipment, some facility, some infrastructure. Some you can use a car. You can use say a tin of curry or Milo. Some of these things are ways that you can let people on the lower ground appreciate it. So basically, that is how we tend to do it. If you're talking about say inflation, and they say inflation is 150 or inflation is 50%, you can just tell them that a loaf of bread that they were probably buying for 1,000 is now selling for 1,500. Over there, people tend to actually relay with this figures better, and then your information and your data can actually be communicated in a way that everyone can appreciate.
How do you balance the need for speed in reporting breaking news with the importance of verifying financial numbers and data, especially during times of high volatility?
Now, this question is a very important one. See, you simply cannot get it wrong with numbers because uh, men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. When it comes to numbers, numbers are actually like one of the most critical parts of uh, informing your audience. And so it is very important that you have to get that balance. How do you get the balance? Always cross check, no matter what, even if it's a full stop. After you have typed your number, after you have written the number down, always cross check. Because a decimal, a comma, a full stop somewhere can change everything that you have worked for as a data journalist, as a researcher. So it's very important to to cross-check your numbers. I can't emphasize this over and over again.
All right, thanks so much, Edem. Edem Kojo is a researcher and a data journalist, and he joined us today on The Factory to deal with tricky numbers. Here's the tip for the episode before we go. Tip for the episode: follow the trail. Check the original source. Don't rely on second-hand figures. A number quoted in a news article might be misinterpreted. Always look for the original report, press release, or data sets to verify accuracy. Thanks for tuning into The Factory. My name is Akol. Hi there. Thank you for joining us on this journey to fight misinformation and disinformation and also malinformation. But we need your support in subscription, liking our content, and leaving comments on our episodes. We'd be grateful if you do that for us. And please turn on your notification bell so that whenever The Factory is on, you're the first to get the episode. Thank you very much.